What's up, everybody? Welcome in episode 98 of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. I know a little different than this week. I know normally I record the episode, I put it out on a Thursday or early Friday. Doing this one a little last second as far as the PFL is concerned and Bellator 261 tonight, but wanted to give some thoughts to you, preview both those cards. And UFC Vegas 30 coming up tomorrow, as well as mixing a little boxing. Tank Davis back in action against Mario Barrios. Really excited about that fight. So going to go through all of that, all on today's, we'll say, normally I say it's a pop-up episode, but we'll call it episode 98 since I didn't have time yesterday to roll out an official episode. So episode 98 here, going to preview everything for you. You'll get to it all in 1 second. I know the PFL 5 card is, or it's PFL 6 now, actually. Sorry. PFL 6. I'm getting my numbers mixed up now. The PFL 6 card about to kick off in a second here. I actually have a separate TV over here that I'll be doing all my media work all night as I have some cool things coming up with Bellator again tonight. We'll be covering Bellator 261 with the post-fight press conferences when that starts in about a half hour now. So I'll try to roll through this pretty quick. That's why I'll go quick through the details right now. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Man in the Cage Pod. Go to the website, maninthecagemmma.show. You can find everything there for the podcast. You're already here on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, though, please do so. Hit the subscribe button on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Also, then go to the audio platforms, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, guys. Hit the follow button or subscribe button on all of those. That way you get the latest notifications on all of those platforms. And then a big shout out again to all the sponsors, quickly running through them. I'll mention them at the end of the show again. DBK Media, go follow them on Twitter and on Instagram at DBK Media. Check them out online at dbkmedia.co. They are the digital marketing agency, guys. And then go check out Bovada and use my link bit.ly/the man in the cage, bit.ly/the man in the cage. Not too late to get in some bets, some things for tonight's cards. So head over there right now. I believe the PFL on Bovada is already closed, but there are still some fights for Bellator 261 that are open. And then, of course, all the combat sports action we have tomorrow. So go check out Bovada, bit.ly/the man in the cage. Use that link. You get some cool offers, bonuses, those types of things. So thank you to all the sponsors out there. All right, let's get into it. And I do want to just briefly mention, because I know it's getting started right now, this PFL 6 card. I'm going to just go over that real quick before it gets started in case you're jumping on. And that's what you're looking for right now. Not a ton of huge thoughts on this card, to be honest with you. This has probably been, I don't want to say the weakest one we've had in weeks here, although it probably is the weakest PFL card we've had in weeks here. There's heavyweights on this card. There's also obviously the women's lightweight division. So there's going to be some interesting fights. Not saying there's nothing, but you go from Clarissa Shields and that card and that hype to even last week we had, Ray Cooper fighting on that card. We had some big moments on that one. Still some big names because Kayla Harrison's fighting tonight. One of the biggest, most notable names in women's mixed martial arts right now. So Kayla Harrison will be cool when she faces off with Cindy Dandois in the main event of PFL 6. So there's still some spots, but don't have too many huge thoughts on PFL 6 coming up in a second. But just, as I said, brief thoughts on it, though. Main event, Kayla Harrison. I put the tweet out there earlier this week at Man in the Cage Pod. It still stands true. You have a top 5 woman in the world in mixed martial arts facing a non-top 100, in my opinion, woman in Cindy Dandois. Nothing against Cindy Dandois. I know she's 16-6. She's had an okay career, but Kayla Harrison's on a different level. We're talking about Kayla Harrison in next year or two here, probably fighting Chris Cyborg in Bellator, or going to the UFC and fighting Amanda Nunes, or facing Clarissa Shields at some point here whenever they deem Clarissa Shields ready. So, this is just, that's the clash here, that you have a great women's mixed martial artist versus a non-top 100. It's not going to be a contest. It's why they've lined it in Vegas the way they did at like minus 3,000. Looks like a boxing line, to be honest with you, for those out there that follow boxing and bet boxing. That's how Kayla Harrison looks tonight. She's going to stay undefeated. She's going to go find the finish, in my opinion, probably by knockout, probably some ground and pound maybe, or maybe she'll keep this fight on the feet. As Dandois, the one thing she does do a little bit is she does have a somewhat slick submission game on the ground. So if you're Kayla Harrison, maybe avoid it, but she's so good, she can go down to the ground, probably still win the fight over Dandois. So Kayla Harrison wins tonight by however she wants to win. Co-main event of PFL 6, probably more intriguing to me. Anthony Pettis taking on Rosh Monfillo. Of course, Pettis needs a finish in order to make the playoffs. For those that are new to the PFL, again, PFL, a season-style format. So, Anthony Pettis, at this point, he had one PFL fight. He lost it to Clay Collard. So now he needs a finish. He was supposed to fight last week, or was it last week or the week, a couple weeks ago, I believe, maybe. It was somewhere in that range. He was supposed to fight. Was pulled off that card. And I haven't seen anything worrisome going into this fight. So you think he's probably mostly ready to fight tonight, but he needs a finish. So I think that's probably one of the more interesting fights on this card, just because what is Anthony Pettis going to do? I expect a full showtime in this fight. That he has to go find the finish. So he has to go full showtime here. And if not, then the PFL is going to have wasted some of their best signings of the year. I thought going into the season, we'd see Fabricio Verdum going into the playoffs here. I thought we'd see Anthony Pettis going into the playoffs here. Verdum, of course, for reasons and being older, I don't think the season format's good for him, an older fighter like that. He had to pull out of his last fight. He's not going to make the playoffs just because he's not fighting right now. He had to pull out of that fight. He's not in shape. He's injured. Something's going on with him where he can't fight right now. Anthony Pettis, on the other hand here, he might not make it just because he lost his first fight, and then we'll see what he does here tonight against Manfio. So I'm interested to see that one. I do think Pettis is going to get the victory. I think that's a lock for the most part. Now, I'm not nothing against Manfio, but this is levels here. And I'll talk about that getting into Bellator 261 in a second here. But levels, Pettis has done it on a higher level, right? He's done it in the UFC. He's done it for a longer time. He's going to get the win tonight. Now, does he find the finish? I actually tend to think he might find the finish tonight because he knows it and the urgency. And that's the one cool thing, actually, I will say about the PFL. And I think it's also the one argument you can have for always talk about MMA judging. We saw the terrible judging last week on the Roy McDonald-Gleason Tabao fight. But, one of the other arguments for having open scoring is if the other fighter knows he's down, aren't they going to push harder, right? Anthony Pettis, he's going to have to push hard in this fight. He knows he's down. He knows he needs the finish here. So he's going to push the whole time. He's got to. And if he doesn't, then for his sake, I would probably say maybe you should go fight in another organization where maybe you can just collect some paydays moving forward. What are you really fighting for? Do you want that $1 million or do you not? I think he does, and I think he's going to push for it tonight, and I do think he might find that finish. I think we might see another classic Showtime moment versus Rosh Monfillo in that matchup. And then elsewhere down that main card, you have Lance Palmer, the two-time featherweight division winner. He's taking on Movlid Khaybulaev. I think Movlid's going to get the win in this one over Lance Palmer. Palmer's had his day in PFL. He's won a couple tournaments. He's collected a couple $1 million off of that. He's had a good life. He's going to probably return to the PFL next year, may win it next year. I don't know if this is the season, though. It doesn't look good for him. This will set up the featherweight bracket in the playoffs. We'll see. Palmer's got that wrestling, but Khaybulaev, when you're messing around with these Dagestani guys, when you're messing around with these Russian wrestlers, guys like Lance Palmer are going to have a little bit of a hard time. So I like Khaybulaev and that one over Lance Palmer. And then you have Brandon Sales taking on Dennis Goltsov also on the main card. That a heavyweight bout should be a good one there as well, just because they're heavyweights, and then you can go down the list. I mean, Larissa Pacheco taking on Olena Kolenesek. Kolenesek yesterday, she missed weight, the only person on the card to miss weight. So there's some decent spots on this card. I'm looking forward to it. As I said, I have the TV over here as the card's getting started now. So tune into the fights and then keep me going here. Keep on the live stream here so I can talk about these other fights and we can preview everything moving forward. So that's PFL 6 again. Wanted to get that out of the way since the card's starting right now. And by the way, I do know Cage Warriors 124 was on today. I tuned into the card yesterday, Cage Warriors 123, a very good card. I was going to tune in today, but was very busy getting things ready for this and also tonight, and about to get into that Bellator 261. Again, I'll be covering all the Bellator fights tonight. I'm actually going to probably need everyone out there to keep me up to date. I'm going to try to tune in a little bit, but I might need everyone to keep me up to date a little bit on what's happening on PFL 6 because I'm going to be covering Bellator 261 tonight. Going to be in all those post-fight press conferences, talking to all those fighters after they win, including the main card, all that stuff. So keep it locked on my Twitter all night, at Man in the Cage Pod, and then on Instagram in the upcoming days to see some of the videos after some of this post-fight stuff at Man in the Cage Pod. But let's get into that now, though. Bellator 261 coming up. And again, it's about 20 minutes away from that card starting, so I'll wrap it up before then. So I'm going to have to go a little quicker here. But, this is a very good card, in my opinion. Is it a great card? No, it's not. I mean, you might just say it's a good card, but I still think it's a very good card, though. The main event of this one, you have Valentin Moldavsky taking on Tim Johnson for the interim heavyweight title. In my opinion, it is for the heavyweight title. And I said this the other day at Media Day in one of my reaction videos I had on Twitter. that, people were asking Moldavsky, they're asking Tim Johnson, how does it feel, for this to be the interim title? Do you want to go fight Ryan Bader, obviously, who is the current still is the current Bellator heavyweight champion? Do you still want to go fight him? Do you think it, not only say means less, but in so many words, does it mean less, right? To be the interim champion. And both guys, both of them obviously want to fight Ryan Bader at some point, but both guys kind of not buying into that necessarily. And I don't buy into that either, because Bader hasn't defended the belt since September of 2019. That's almost 2 years ago. In my opinion, he's not the heavyweight champion right now. They'll keep it with him because they want to do the heavyweight tournament with Bader and some of these other guys, and they can boast, hey, we have an interim champion and a heavyweight champion, in the same bracket together, eventually maybe going at it. So they'll try to boast that. But in my opinion, I think whoever wins tonight is the heavyweight champion in Bellator. So let's get into these guys a little bit more, Moldavsky and Tim Johnson. We know what Tim Johnson is at this point of his career. I don't want to say a journeyman, because he's found himself at this point of his career now where he does get a title shot. But at one point, he was kind of a journeyman. He left the UFC in the win column, by the way. He did leave the UFC in a win column. And then he went to Bellator and he tripped up. And he lost a couple times in a row. He was having some knockout losses. It appeared that Tim Johnson was probably going to be that gatekeeper a little bit, that he was on his way out of fighting, at least at even a Bellator UFC type of level. You know what I mean? Like maybe he would have went to the PFL, something like that. I kind of saw that for him. But then he fights Tyrell Fortune, and he knocks out Tyrell Fortune. And from there, his career again has just taken a few more steps up. And that's just because of mostly his work ethic. He's really worked on his game. His striking is better now. He considers himself a brawler, even though he's got that collegiate wrestling background. He's a very good wrestler, but he uses that wrestling similar to we've seen other big heavyweights and other fighters like Dan Henderson over the years, sometimes Daniel Cormier. We've seen those guys use their wrestling background to keep the fight standing. That's what Tim Johnson's been able to do. And now that he's fixed some of the broken parts of his striking, better feints, better footwork, setting up everything better, digesting, processing things a little bit better in the cage, he's really turned his career around a little bit more in the twilight years of his career here, where now all of a sudden he's super relevant again. He could be the interim heavyweight champion by the end of the night in Bellator. So we kind of know what Tim Johnson is, and he's going to be the bigger guy here, and that's a point I want to get to in a second here. Moldavsky, what he does. He's more going to be more of the speedier of the two, obviously. His movement, his footwork, very good. He's got that combat Sambo background. So he's also got his wrestling background in Sambo. So he's going to be very ready for if Tim Johnson was going to shoot a takedown, which I don't know if he necessarily would in this fight, but he'd be ready for that. Plus, obviously, he wants to use that Sambo, get guys up against the cage, get guys to the mat, like Khabib, like some of these other Dagestani Russian guys. Even though I believe Moldavsky is not from Dagestan. He is from Russia technically now. I saw somewhere he might have been born in Ukraine, but where he's born is now technically Russia. It's a whole thing. We'll just say he's from Russia. I don't think he's from Dagestan, though, but he's still got that Sambo background. He was very good in a lot of these Sambo tournaments. And now he's going to use a lot of that, again, with his speed and everything, to try to capture gold tonight in the Bellator heavyweight division. And I think the number one thing that's going to probably slow him down a little bit in this fight, or the thing that's going to maybe even things out a little bit, because I will say that I am picking Valentin Moldavsky. I do think he gets the job done tonight. If he hadn't faced guys like Roy Nelson and other big heavyweights, I might be doubting a little bit more. But because of the size here, and that's what I'm going to get into, I might be doubting a little bit more, but he has beaten guys like Roy Nelson. He has beaten bigger heavyweights. Now, Roy Nelson, some of those guys on the back end of their career, they're definitely out the door. They're going out the door, right? So you can't take too much away from those. But still, he's been able to use some of his strength. He's been able to use some of his speed and all that to use his Sambo still and able to toss around guys. So that's why I'm still going to pick him in this fight. But he is the smaller of the two heavyweights here. He's almost a 205er in my opinion. He's almost a light heavyweight. You look at his frame. You look how he's fought in other fights compared to his other opponents. Same thing with Tim Johnson here. He's just a much smaller heavyweight. It does make you worry going into a fight for him for fights like this, where Tim Johnson's 6'3", pulling 260, 265, 270, whatever he's going to weigh on fight night here. I mean, Tim Johnson is a large individual. He's a gigantic individual. He's going to be putting a lot of weight, a lot of power moving towards Moldavsky. So I think that's the biggest worry for Moldavsky tonight is that Tim Johnson gets him up against the cage, grinds him out, tires him down, maybe hits him with a big shot that he doesn't see because he is setting that striking up a little bit better now, and he is a light heavyweight. And also, I think something people don't talk about enough with Moldavsky is, along with being a smaller heavyweight, I don't think he possesses the power like a normal heavyweight. Doesn't mean he can't find the finish here, especially if he's able to get his Sambo and tire Tim Johnson down in this fight. But he doesn't possess that one-punch power that maybe even Tim Johnson might have a little bit more in this fight. So he's not going to be able to put guys away, especially early on. So I see this fight probably, unless Tim Johnson does something drastic, it's probably going to be a 2, 3, 4, maybe 5-round fight here. I do think someone probably gets finished maybe eventually. I do think it's it's inevitable. I mean, you have two big heavyweights in there going 5 rounds. If there's a lot of wrestling, if there's a lot of exchanges, if there's a lot of big striking exchanges here, guys are going to gas out. Guys are going to gas down. I wouldn't be surprised if late Moldavsky used his freshness of being the fresher of the two guys to find a finish on Tim Johnson. Maybe find that takedown, finish it with some ground and pound, or just put it on him a little bit more. If he's still the quicker heavyweight, he's still got the faster hands, he's still got the better movement at that point. But early on, especially early on, Tim Johnson's very live in this fight. And I expect Tim Johnson to try to dirty this fight up, try to grind him down, try to tire him down, try to use that power, that size to give Moldavsky problems. And if Moldavsky, if he starts struggling, not being able to throw Tim Johnson around the 265 or whatever he's going to weigh tonight, could be issues for Moldavsky. But I'm going to go with Moldavsky in this fight. I still think he finds a way to get the job done in this one on the main event of Bellator 261. And again, if you want to send any comments, questions in, I saw I already have one here. I will get to that in a second. Please do send it in. And I will get to the Teixeira Jesus fight coming up as I go down the Bellator 261 card. Somebody asking about that. But real quick, the rest of the main card. In the co-main event, you have Kana Watanabe taking on Liz Carmouche. This just seems like a little, to put it short and sweet, I wish I could go more into this one just because of time here. But, Liz Carmouche, this just seems like a too little too early for Watanabe, where she's 10-0 in her career, but now she gets Carmouche in front of her, who Carmouche has fought in everybody. She's fought Valentina Shevchenko. She's fought Ronda Rousey. She's fought the who's of the who's in women's mixed martial arts. She's an OG. She's still really strong. She's a strong flyweight for this division. Even for this division, she could even go down to 115 sometimes if she drops enough weight. She's just overall a great athlete, as Liz Carmouche. And I think she's going to use that against Watanabe here, where I really like Watanabe's game, actually. And I kept finding ways, and I'm still debating it, ways to pick her in this fight. But I think just everything points to Carmouche. I think this is just not Watanabe's time yet. I think this is one of those fights where she takes a step back, loses, and then maybe in the future, we see her learn from this and keep moving up the division here. Long term, if I had to take stock because of both women's ages, I'd probably take Watanabe right now. Stock moving forward. If I'm taking stock tonight, though, it's Liz Carmouche. And I think she's going to be able to stuff a lot of those judo throws. Watanabe, again, a black belt in judo, very good judo fighter. Liz Carmouche had issues in the Ronda Rousey fight a little bit way back in the day, but that was ages ago. And Watanabe, I'm not saying she's not Ronda Rousey or she's not great, but what Ronda Rousey was able to do in her time was almost unheard of, right? So I'm going to go with Carmouche here. She also brought in, speaking of Ronda Rousey is judo coach for this fight, and they've been training her. So I think she's going to be more than ready for those judo throws. I think she'll keep it standing for a lot of it. Watanabe's got to work on her striking a little bit. I think it's where Carmouche is going to tag her up a little bit, be able to win this by, we'll say, decision. I don't know if she finds the finish here because Watanabe, she's fought in Risen. She's fought around the world still, in her 10 pro fights or 11 pro fights that she has. But I don't think she's going to get finished necessarily, but I do think Carmouche in this fight finds a way to get the job done over Kana Watanabe. But it should be good. And this is, by the way, this is one of those fights where Watanabe, if she starts judo throwing Carmouche around, she wins the fight. That is a huge test pass for her. And absolutely, she should get a title moving forward. I would see the same thing here for Carmouche, though. If she's able to beat Watanabe, because of how good I think Watanabe can be in the future, I do think then Carmouche should get a title shot after this one. So a little bit of a title eliminator, if you will, for that women's flyweight title in the co-main event. Should be a fun one between those two women. But I'll pick Carmouche there. We'll say by decision. In the main event, I didn't really give an official prediction. I'll say Moldavsky by TKO late, maybe around 4 or 5. Maybe puts away Tim Johnson in that one. Rest of the main card, Daniel Weichel taking on Keone Diggs. I'll take Weichel here by upset. I think Weichel although, he's a little bit less fresh as far as he's fought more in his career. He's got over 40 pro fights compared to Keone Diggs, who has only 9 pro fights. The relatively same age. Keone Diggs has had problems with injuries. He's had problems staying active in his career. Not all his fault. Things happen. I talked to him earlier this week at Media Day, asked him about his mindset, and what he's going to take away, his mindset and what. Sorry, I was distracted here by PFL 6. We already have a finish early on in this fight. I believe it's Janelle Jones, I guess. I guess he already found a finish over Barrios, I think. That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, his mindset, and what he's battled through in his career, I think it might give him a mental edge. I asked him about that, and he seemed to buy into that a little bit. He was very humble about it, but he could have a little bit of a mental edge because of that. But Daniel Weichel, he's still fought more times, though, and I do think Daniel Weichel overall game-wise is better than Keone Diggs, and I think he's going to give Keone Diggs his first loss tonight. Weichel's fought in everybody, and has he lost? Yes, but he's also been fighting killers. He's been in there with Patricio Pitbull. He's been in there with the best of the best in Bellator. So it's going to be very interesting in that one between Weichel and Diggs. Miles Jury, Sydney Outlaw. Sydney Outlaw, always an interesting character. Miles Jury, fun guy himself. This should deliver some fireworks. I could see this being a very close fight. I think it's going to be, can Sydney Outlaw get this fight up against the cage? Can he press? Can he press Miles Jury? Can he start to grind him down? Maybe find some takedowns. And then for Miles Jury, if he can keep this fight standing, though, I think he's going to have the striking advantage over Sydney Outlaw in this one. I'm going to pick Miles Jury by split decision here. I think it's going to be greasy. I think I have another upset predicted here, Jury over Outlaw, but I think he's able to keep this fight standing enough, use his boxing, use his striking, and able to outpoint Sydney Outlaw on this card. But that one's going to be pretty explosive. And, it's one of those fights where if you had to pick one that could go to a draw tonight, wouldn't be surprised if it was Outlaw and Miles Jury. But I'm going to go Miles Jury by decision in that one. And then the fight that'll start the main card tonight, we have Christian Edwards taking on Simon Byong. Byong, by the way, too, not too short notice, but I believe is about a week's notice, a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. Stepping in here, he was supposed to fight Ben Parrish, or Ben Parrish was supposed to fight Christian Edwards. Sorry. But now Byong coming in here and he's going to fight Christian Edwards. Another fight that could be explosive. And Edwards, only 4-0 in his career. He's shown a lot of promise, but a lot of these Bellator guys, as we see sometimes, they haven't been tested yet. So, this could be a fight where he could be tested. I think there's going to be some interesting moments in this fight, but I think at the end of the day, Edwards ends up finding the finish at some point, though. I do think he ends up finishing Byong in this one and getting that W, getting his hand raised, maybe in the second round, maybe finding a finish there. So main card, very good coming up tonight. Really looking forward to it on Bellator 261. Now let me run through the rest of the card here now. And by the way, again, send in your questions and your comments. Already got one out there. Thoughts on the Teixeira versus Jesus fight, and I'll get to that in this portion of the show as we go through the prelims. Soren Bach taking on Bobby Lee. That's the feature prelim tonight. I'm going to go Soren Bach. Bobby Lee was looking pretty shredded yesterday. But Soren Bach, I'm very high on him, actually. Fought in Cage Warriors. Now he's in Bellator. Guy's the real deal, in my opinion. I think he's going to be one of those guys like a Mason Jones, like a Jake Hadley. You can go through all the Cage Warriors, Conor McGregor's of the past, all those guys. Maybe he doesn't reach that level, but I think Soren Bach's a very solid fighter, though, and I think he finds a way to get the job done tonight against Bobby Lee. I don't know if by knockout we'll see, maybe by decision, but I think he gets the job done there. Isaiah Hoikett taking on Corey Samuels. That is Hoikett's professional debut tonight. Always interesting with the professional debuts. I think he puts a 1 in the very left side of his column. I think he beats Corey Samuels probably by impressive fashion, probably finds the finish at some point. Jalen Bates taking on Cody Matthews. This one's very interesting to me because Matthews is really small. I mean, he's 5'3". Bates is 5'8". Bates 2-0 in his career. I'm very high on Jalen Bates. I think he could be very good in his career, maybe great, dare I say. So I think this can be Bates putting on a show in front of a crowd. For the first time in his professional career, actually. I asked him that earlier this week, too, at Bellator Media Day, what it's going to be like fighting in front of a crowd. And I think he's going to have that happen. I think he's going to be able to get that W tonight in front of a crowd for the first time in his professional career, as the first 2 fights of his career were in April of this year and then November of last year with all the pandemic stuff going on. So he'll get to put on a show there on Cody Matthews. Taylor Johnson taking on a friend of the show, Lance Wright. I've had Lance Wright on the podcast, episode 96, but throwing those videos out to you guys. This one, a tough one for me because Taylor Johnson is a savage. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's a good wrestler. He goes berserker at times in the first round. Sometimes he gasses, though. And maybe I'm being a little biased here, but I'm going to pick Lance Wright in this fight. Now, Taylor Johnson, if he wins, again, I'm not surprised about that, but I'll pick Lance Wright here. He's from Indiana. He's got that Midwest strength, if you will. I don't think people buy into that enough. I think he's going to have to outlast an early flurry from Taylor Johnson, though, because he's going to come out really looking to probably put on a show here. But if he does, he trains at Team Elevation, does Lance Wright. He's going to have Neil Magny, I would assume, in his corner, guys like that. He trains with Justin Gaethje. He trains with Corey Sandhagen. He trains with all those guys, Jude Ober. You name him at Team Elevation Fight Team. He trains with all those guys. So I think if he can outlast the first round here, he's the taller fighter. I think maybe he has a shot here against Taylor Johnson. So I'll pick Lance Wright by upset. Again, maybe a little bias on that one, but I'll pick him on that one. And then as somebody was asking in the chat, the final one here, John Macapa taking on John De Jesus or John Teixeira. I don't know why Bellator has his name different on the website as John Macapa. But John Teixeira, John De Jesus. This one, a very interesting one to me. And I'm actually glad somebody asked about it because I'm kind of back and forth on this one too. I think Teixeira, I'm actually going to pick him. I think he gets the job done. I think he gets the victory. I think he's just got the better overall resume of his career. I think even the guys he's been fighting are a step above where De Jesus has been. De Jesus, though, he didn't look too bad his last time out against Aaron Pico. He didn't look terrible at all until he caught that right hand from hell. And he was losing the fight. When I say he wasn't looking bad, I mean that he looked a little scary, especially for a guy like Pico who's had some chin issues. He looked pretty scary out there to Aaron Pico. I thought he might have a shot to knock him out. He had very rangy in that fight, looked pretty crisp with the striking. I think it's going to be I think this one's going to be closer than the money line suggests in Vegas. You have a minus 210 money line for Teixeira. You have around plus whatever 180 line or something like that, or 170 for John De Jesus. I think it's gonna be closer than that. So if I was gonna look to maybe bet this fight, it's interesting because I still think Teixeira gets the W. I don't know if John De Jesus he's one of those guys where maybe he tests guys and he'll have some moments in his career, but I don't know if he necessarily gets the win here. So I'm gonna take Teixeira though. I'll say he wins by decision, but we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised for the upset here, and I would actually make those betting lines a little closer between Teixeira and De Jesus and that one. All right, that's Bellator 261 for you. We actually have only 3 minutes until that card gets started. Coming up in a second here, Bellator 261. So I'm actually going to cut it a little bit short. I lied. I said I was going to go into UFC Vegas 30, but maybe I'll wait. I'll save that for tomorrow. Actually, let me just go into it real quick. You know what? Card's going to start in a second anyway. I'll just run through it, try to get through some of the stuff before the card starts. But main event, mostly, that's what I want to get into. Alexander Volkov taking on Cyril Gane. Another good, we have a heavyweight clash tonight, Tim Johnson versus Moldavsky. You have Volkov versus Gane tomorrow, and that's going to be a very good fight as well. Gane, I don't want to say mostly unproven in his career because even as an 8-0 fighter, he's fought some pretty decent names to this point in his career. Now, the names he's been fighting, like Junior Dos Santos, way diminished at this point of the career. Junior Dos Santos is not the same as he was early in his career, right? So Gane has been somewhat tested as far as namesake goes, but he really hasn't been tested. And that's why I think Volkov is a popular pick in this fight, especially because Volkov, who, he fought Greg Hardy, at one point. Has he been having the toughest road to this point either? No, but he's been looking really good, though. So I think that's why that makes Volkov an interesting pick in this fight against Cyril Gane. But, what Volkov does well, long, rangy striker. He's got a good jab. He uses his feints. His kicks up the middle, his teep kick, very, very good. He really goes to the body throughout the fight. I think that's what's impressive to me about Volkov is he goes to the body throughout the whole fight. He does have some weaknesses. He keeps his chin a little too high in the air sometimes, has that tall man defense, if you will. He can also be taken down sometimes. His takedown defense not that solid. Now, I will say this, though, about Volkov is he's hard to keep down, though, and he is harder to take down the longer the fight goes. We saw that in the Fabricio Verdum Volkov fight where Verdum had a ton of success early on the fight, taking him down, working him. But as Volkov started to be the better conditioned of the two fighters, the better of two making adjustments, he was able to stuff a lot of those takedowns, sprawl, and then also end up on top in a lot of those exchanges. So Volkov is a very tricky character, and this is going to be the same way against Cyril Gane here. Now, Cyril Gane fights out of that karate stance somewhat, very technical with this style, great jab, great combinations, beautiful straight right hand, uses solid feints as well. He puts everything together with fluidity, switching stances, Muay Thai, his leg kicks. He's good at counter punching, grappling wise. He's good at dropping down on his level changes and grabbing some takedowns. Mentality, he can be one of those guys that he can smell blood in the water. And he can also be patient at times. So Cyril Gane's again, has he been ultra tested yet? No, but he's a very, very good fighter going up to this point. Weaknesses, again, though, he does have some still. He does open himself up a bit when he's resetting his striking sequences. And he also likes to peel off to the left side a lot with the striking exchanges. And then if you feint in on him, you can catch him a bit flat-footed at times. So, there's things he still has to clean up like everybody does. It should lead to a great main event. Now, who I'm picking tomorrow, I'm actually going to pick Alexander Volkov in this one. I think Volkov gets the upset. So I'm picking, a couple Russians this weekend, actually. A Russian in the main event of Bellator 261, Moldavsky, and then I'm going to pick Volkov in the main event of UFC Vegas 30. I think Volkov's got enough to get it done. He's a much bigger heavyweight again. And unlike Timothy Johnson, though, I think Volkov's going to have the better overall game to deal with someone like Cyril Gane. Now, he's probably going to lose some rounds here and there, and he might have to find a knockout. But I believe in his skill set and his tools. The fact that he goes to the body, the big kicks that he throws up the middle, his lightning precision, big power bomb, boxing combinations he's started to really lock down on and really precise in his last few fights here. I think it's going to be too much for Cyril Gane at times. I wouldn't be surprised if he clipped Cyril Gane and he was able to find the knockout in this one. Anytime you're throwing, these big men are throwing like that. And again, Volkov, the bigger fighter. You can see that today at the weigh-ins, UFC Vegas 30 weigh-ins, much bigger fighter. So I'm going to take Alexander Volkov in that one. I think he gets the job done, probably by knockout. Wouldn't be surprised, though, Cyril Gane, we see young fighters, sometimes their chin gets tested like Brandon Moreno, where everyone thought Figueiredo was going to knock Moreno out in their first fight. And then Figueiredo wasn't able to really knock him out. The chin was better than we thought. So maybe he hangs around and it goes to decision. If it does, that's the best case for him, because I think Cyril Gane probably, if this fight goes to decision, probably has the better of the path to that. But these are heavyweights. It's 5 rounds again. It's a small octagon at the Apex Center in Las Vegas. So I'm going to go with Volkov in this one to get the job done. I think he's going to be. I think the size is going to be a little bit of a difference here, and I think he's going to chip away, break down Cyril Gane, able to find that knockout, like I said, or maybe a win later on in that card. So, a decision later on in the night there. All right, so that's the UFC Vegas 30 main event. That's how I'm predicting that one, and then running through the rest of them here. Tanner Boser, Vince St. Preux. I'm going to go Boser in this one, although Boser's been tripped up a little bit lately. But this seems like a prime UFC spot of, hey, we've been testing you. We still think a lot of you, but we've been testing you and you've tripped up a little bit. Here's OSP, though. Another test for you, but here's a more beatable opponent for you. OSP could still get the job done. He's one of those guys that pulls the rabbit out of the hat, but I think he gets the job done, does Tanner Boser. Raoni Barcelos taking on Timur Valiev. I'm going to go Barcelos in that one. I love Barcelos. Just love his game. What he brings, he's a savage. I'm so excited for that one. I'm going to go Barcelos by knockout. Andre Fili, I'm going to take him by knockout over Daniel Pineda. Tim Means against Nicholas Dalby. Tim Means has the perfect game to face somebody like Nicholas Dalby. I'll take Tim Means by decision. And then Renato Moicano taking on Jai Herbert. I'm going to go Moicano in that one. Moicano, one of those guys you want to watch moving forward with his UFC career, as he could have that similar Charles Oliveira-like Brazilian ascent to the title maybe, or at least ascent in his career, that he seems like he's maybe on that point of his career where if he just does enough things here, approves enough, tweaks enough things, maybe he can find enough wins to get something going inside the lightweight division. All right, so that's the main card, and I'll tweet out there's a bunch of other great fights. I mean, Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Michel Pereira tomorrow. Kennedy Njoikwa taking on Danilo Marquez. Some very, very good fight. I mean, Marcin Parcheno taking on Ike Villanueva. Some very good fights coming up tomorrow. I'm going to tweet out the rest of my picks on Twitter since I'm short on time here tomorrow at Man in the Cage Pod. So I'll tweet out the rest of the prelims tomorrow at Man in the Cage Pod there. All right. And then just real quick, before I get out of here, again, the Bellator card's about to start here, I believe. Yeah, it's 5:33 already, Central Time where I'm at. So the Bellator card's about to start. So real quick, a boxing prediction, though, because I am very excited to see Gervonta Tank Davis take on Mario Barrios tomorrow night. Davis going up 2 weight classes. There's so many intriguing factors about this fight of, does the power carry for Gervonta Davis 2 weight classes above? Does Barrios' size bother Tank Davis? Does he take a punch as well 2 weight classes up? Does Gervonta Davis do that? There's so many intriguing factors here that I love about this fight. And I've seen a lot of people out there picking Barrios by upset. I just can't do it, though. Until I see it, until I see Gervonta Davis in the ring struggling with his power against Barrios, struggling with the size of Barrios. What I know about Gervonta Davis is he does possess a lot of power, and the power that he possesses is worldly. So I think he's actually going to carry some of that with him up to weight classes. And he's always been pretty quick. He's always been pretty good at setting up his big power shots. He's always been pretty good at overall setting up everything. And I think that's probably the underrated part of his game. Everyone just thinks of him as a devastating power puncher. He is a devastating power puncher, but he's got a lot of great boxing skills as well. So I'm going to pick Gervonta Davis. I'm going to say he does get the knockout. Now, does he get it early on? I will give you this. I do think Barrios is going to be a little tougher. I do think it'll be a little tougher as he climbs here to get that knockout. But I think eventually he does. We'll say round 8 or 9, maybe 10. I think it's going to be a late knockout for Gervonta Davis. Maybe even at one point, Barrios is forced to quit on the stool. Maybe the doctors stop it. I could see something like that happen. That I just think Davis is going to chip away. I think he's going to have enough power still and just start going at Barrios. And Barrios, for all the size that he has, and everyone talking about, hey, he needs to keep him at range. A lot of Barrios' shots, though, are loopy. He throws a lot of big hooks, a lot of things that I think if Gervonta Davis gets on the inside, and as Teddy Atlas always says, the great boxing mind of Teddy Atlas says, great former trainer Teddy Atlas, always says is, for the little guy to get in there and break some windows. I think if Gervonta Davis gets in there and breaks some windows on Barrios, I think he chips away enough and finds the knockout. Either way, Tank Davis is one of my favorite fighters in the world right now to watch. Could he be tripped up here? And this is why, again, it's interesting. Yes, Barrios is a very good fighter and could easily launch his stardom. He's an undefeated fighter too. But I think Tank Davis is going to keep the legend growing here by getting a knockout, 2 weight classes up. And from there, we'll see where his stardom goes within boxing. So I'm going to pick Tank Davis by knockout tomorrow night as well. All right, that's everything coming up this weekend. I'm going to have plenty more stuff coming up on Twitter and on Instagram at Man in the Cage Pod. Plenty more picks, plenty more thoughts, plenty more reaction. Again, Bellator 261 getting started now. We're going to have post-fight reaction inside those press conferences tonight from Bellator 261 from the Mohegan Sun Arena. So make sure you tune into my Twitter at Man in the Cage Pod. Tune in next week. More importantly, too, as I will be back on Monday to recap everything, react to everything on episode 99 of the Man in the Cage podcast. Again, one more time for you. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Man in the Cage Pod. Go check out the website, maninthecagemmma.show. Go to the YouTube channel, so hit the subscribe button there. Go to the audio platforms, hit all the follow and subscribe buttons there on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, guys. And then also, again, be back here next week for episode 99 of the Man in the Cage podcast. I'll be back here breaking everything down, reacting to everything we were seeing right now on PFL 6, which has been a pretty actually good card so far, and Bellator 261. That should be fun tonight. All right, shout out to Bovada, bit.ly/the Man in the Cage. Go use that link. Shout out to DBK Media, another sponsor of the show. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, go to the website again, maninthecagemmma.show. There's a sponsors tab there. You can get rolling with the team here. I'd love to have you a part of the team here, so go check that out, maninthecagemmma.show. All right, everybody, enjoy the fights tonight. Again, follow me on Twitter at maninthecagepod for continued coverage all night. But until next episode 99, I'll talk to everybody later.